Our final speaker for this session is again a CHTC person, Matyas Selmeci, who's going to be talking about our new PlacementD and how to submit remotely.
Thanks, Greg. Can people hear me? Cool.
We can't hear you anymore.
Using it to make remote placement easier. Just so we're on the same page, vocabulary-wise, remote placement I'm going to use as the ability to submit, remove, hold, get the results of, or otherwise manipulate jobs on an access point. And this is the key, without shell access on the access point. And you might wonder, why do we want to get rid of shell access? And in fact, I think there are multiple views of this, multiple perspectives, and I'm going to start with the admin perspective. An access point is a shared resource. I think a lot of people these days aren't familiar with that, and it's easy to, accidentally misuse it. Like not a week goes by without some user filling up /temp running their program, or we see a VS Code session using CPU or memory, or Claude using CPU and memory. And I think part of the problem is that there's no feedback, right? You don't feel the machine getting warm. You don't hear the fan spinning up. You can't really tell. And not only can't you tell what you're doing to yourself, but you especially can't tell what you're doing to other users. An even more important thing that's popped up, recently, in the past month and a half, is all those all those local root exploits that seem to come out every Thursday. Even if you know your users, even if you trust your users, you never know when somebody's gonna prompt engineer Claude into getting root for you. So, but it's not just for admins. I think there's a benefit to remote placement for users too. I think users, they genuinely don't want to cause trouble. They want to be good citizens. They sometimes don't know how. And they're operating, on somebody else's machine on an unfamiliar environment, right? They don't have their usual tools, or they might not even be comfortable with a shell at all. I think we can tell this by looking at user behavior, right? We see all those VS Code processes running. Why do people use VS Code? Because it feels like home. It feels like you're running on the local machine. So I think both parties benefit from, actually being home. So because remote placement is useful, but there's also a whole bunch of challenges we need to solve, getting the tool, configuring the client, copying the data to and from the AP. This talk, I'm going to focus on authorization. So the authorization that's needed for remote placement is, of course, a credential that the AP accepts for running all these job management commands. Because the credential is now going to live on people's laptops, we should add some guardrails to make sure that to limit the damage if it gets exposed. For example, revocation, or in this case, short lifetime. One of the consequences, especially of having a short lifetime, is that we need the user to be able to get the credential by themselves instead of having to ask an admin to do it. And so we're adding the PlacementD feature and placement tokens. The PlacementD is a new daemon that lives on the AP that creates placement tokens, which are exactly what I said we needed. They're short-lived credentials that you can use for job placement. And as far as authentication goes, the PlacementD works together with a web application so that the user can use single sign-on with their institutional credentials to get an identifier that the PlacementD accepts and get their tokens. The recent invention has been OAuth to device flow clients that the user can run and actually get these, integrate getting these tokens into their workflow. So I said clients, there's two of them. There's a one for the command line and one for a Jupyter Notebook widget client. They do the same thing. They're just slightly different interface. And I think at this point, most people are familiar with how the device flow works. You get a code, you get a URL that you visit and verify the code. By the way, this might be a little rough around the edges. We're, always open to suggestions over how to make the interface better and things like that. You log in with your institutional credentials, and then you get taken to a request a token page where you can select, what kind of permissions the token should have, or what project the token will be used for. And I'll get back to project in a sec. And once, assuming all your requests are valid, you get a token granted page. It tells you a little bit about your token, and the client you ran installs it in your tokens directory so the Condor tools can use it. Just a little thing to help. It also, the web page also prints out the Condor config you need in order to actually point your tools at the correct SCED. I think, I'm sure we can automate things more, but it's better than having to look things up yourself. I mentioned I'd get back to projects. This is kind of a side quest that we did when we did placement tokens. Is we finally made projects first class in the SCED. I think multiple people have tried to add projects, kind of implemented them independently. So I think it's good that we have a first class wheel for that. And the token is actually linked to a project. So if you get a token for CHTC staff, your submit file now needs to have project name equals CHTC staff in it, or the SCED will refuse to submit it. If you're part of a different project, you need to get different token for that. And the projects now have statistics kept on the AP, things like how many completed jobs or how much CPU time these jobs all used. They're same as users. Also, like users, if a project is misbehaving for some reason, you can suspend the project. This will let their existing jobs continue to run, but new jobs won't start and they can't place new jobs. So I think this provides kind of an extra layer of tracking and management that we haven't really had before. I mentioned tracking. There's also an admin overview page on the website. It lists who's gotten a token recently, what kind of token they have when the token expires, the users that are allowed to get a token, some stuff about both user job statistics and project job statistics. I just rebuilt this AP, so the numbers are kind of boring, but take my word for it. If you actually submit some jobs, they will increment. So in summary, I think giving users shell access on an access point can be dangerous, especially now. But I think remote placement will give users a way to get their work done without shell access. There's multiple pieces to solve, but the PlacementD can solve the auth problem with the device flow client to make the getting the credentials straightforward for the user. And so I want to thank Rowan and the team for all the work in helping us get this implemented. And I will now take questions.
It's time for lunch. Beside the security aspect, it also reflects a separation between the identifier provided by the operating system and an identifier that's managed by the access point. So today, the approach is that if you can SSH to the access point, you can place jobs. And that we are changing. You have to be a registered user of the access point in order to use it. And that is accomplished via the placement token. So I know who you are and you have a token to use it. This is decoupled from whether you have an identifier with the operating system. Now, once we have accomplished that, you can be remote and everything works. And that creates all these advantages that Matyas presented. Now, where we are heading is to have a separate, if you want, token, or I prefer to call them capabilities, for copying data to the access point, which again should not depend on having an account with the operating system on the access point. So happy to discuss it, but I think first of all, everyone should be fed.
Let's do a final round of applause for Matyas. Matyas?